Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hi, hello, welcome. I am Sherrilyn and I am so glad you found me. If you're not new here, welcome back. Thank you for joining me on our True Crime Wine Wednesday. I just can't help myself apparently. I said that I was going to either take off this week or next week, and I had every intention for it to be like this week so I could prepare for Christmas. And then I was just like sitting there like, I should be researching right now. I can't not. It's a problem. So here I am. Surprise. Sorry. If I can help myself, next Wednesday, I will take that time to just refresh, line up all the content, all the things I was supposed to do this week. I apologize. The audio at the beginning of this video is probably going to be like weird. We're probably going to pick up like almost like, I don't know, it always sounds like spacey to me when it picks up sounds from upstairs. And right now, Oriana is having a bath run, so I can hear it, so I know like the mic is going to pick it up, but it won't be forever. And I'll try to tweak that afterwards, but like, let's face it, I'm no audio engineer. Okay, so for this case today, this is something I saw recently on a blog, and I was like, oh my gosh, what the heck is going on? I have never heard of this case before. But they just did sentencing this week or last week, actually, and I looked into it as much as I could. Usually I love to get as much background information as I can about the victims as possible. It was really hard with this one. There's a lot of privacy acts in Asia, and I definitely couldn't find like a lot of background information on them personally. It was hard even for the accused in this case because, again, like the laws over in Asia are much different than I find in the States. It's usually the easiest for me to find background information on the States, but even sometimes in Canada it's difficult. So that being said, I've dug up as much as I possibly can to keep you guys up to speed and let you know what's going on and how everything kind of played out and unfolded behind the scenes. But if you're finding, it seems different than my normal content and I'm not really getting into the background, that's why. All right, we are going to get started. Grab your snacks, grab your drinks. Today I am drinking my non-alcoholic beer with you in my Clark Griswold cup. Just reminds me of my husband. He's like seriously like real life Clark Griswold. Usually I would have my Clamato in here, but it was brought to my attention too late that I ran out. The Heineken, it tastes so good. This is gonna do today. And my grandma this week also sent me my favorite cookies in the mail. So I've got my like favorite little Christmas cookie that I'll snack on while we're hanging out today. It's seriously so good. I always think like I grabbed a real one. Okay, today we are talking about Takahiro Shirashi. You know me, you guys. I think I got Takahiro right, though, his first name. He is most commonly known in media, though, as the Twitter killer. And you know what? Sometimes the clickbait names, they drive me a little bit crazy. Case in point, Mark Twitchell, where he's always dubbed like the Dexter copycat or like the Dexter killer. And I mean, like I used one of them for my video, but it's like working with the algorithm, girl. Like you need to play YouTube's game, and if that's what people know him by, it's just like what you have to put. But personally, I'm like, okay, he wasn't a copycat. Like he completely missed the whole entire point of the show, especially for someone who was apparently so obsessed with it. So it bothers me, but this guy, like, okay, it makes sense because he literally used Twitter to find his victims. So this case unfolded on October 24th, 2017, and it all started when a man contacted the police worried about his missing sister. It came to light that the last person she had seen and known to have had contact with was Takahiro. So the police show up at his apartment in an area called Zama, not Zuma, which is like on the outskirts of Tokyo. And when Takahiro answers the door, they ask him, have you seen this girl? And without hesitation, he just points behind him and there's like a cooler in his living room. So they open it up, and to their horror, not only do they find the remains of this young girl, but around the house there are like various totes and coolers and like toolboxes, and they find the remains of 9 other individuals. And he didn't deny or try to like conceal anything or put the blame on somebody else. He basically just like walked them around the apartment like a furniture salesman, like showing them like the next bin after the other. And I can only imagine like what the police were doing, looking at each other, like just after you leave one bin, he's like, oh, there's one more over here. And oh, the stack over there. Yeah, like there's more there. Like he's super chill. So with him basically just like admitting everything, he's arrested that day. And as people start finding out about this that know him, they're like, there's no way. He grew up like as a very calm, gentle kid. He was very known to be really close to his dad. And his upbringing seemed to be like really typical. There was nothing abnormal really about it. He grew up in Zama with his parents and his younger sister. And again, like neighbors knew the family. They saw them around. They saw him as like a very quiet, respectable kid. In school, his grades weren't something to like brag and write home about, but he was one of those kids who listened to his teacher, showed up every day, like put in the effort to just do what he could. Friends that grew up with him said that he was always known for being a really good listener. He was never somebody who wanted to take control of the conversation and find a way to like work it in to just talk about themselves all the time. So he kind of like made you feel like the attention was on you and that he was really like taking in what you were saying. He also seemed to be a good team player too. He started to get into like the athletics department. He joined the softball team and the track team. The only thing that I could find like in his childhood in those early ages with friends that they thought may have been like a red flag was that in elementary school, there was like that game going around, and I remember this too, like just so twisted. The choking game, like to see if you could like how long it take for you to pass out. So he was really into that one, and friends remember that he would like them to like not stop so that he could actually experience passing out and like coming to. So aside from that, everything else seemed to be quite typical. And then in high school, it seems like things start to fall apart personally for him. His mom and dad go through a divorce and he decides to stay with his dad, and then his mom and sister, they move away and move closer to, I believe it was like a private all-girls school for his sister. So he kind of lost contact with them, not lost contact, but didn't see them often and just like lost that close family tie. It did seem to bring him and his dad closer together, though. He was really known for having a tight bond with his dad. So after he graduates, he works some odd jobs here and there. I think he was at like a supermarket for about 2 years, and then he got a job at a pachinko parlor. I just learned about these and they sound kind of cool. I guess it's like a version of like slots in a casino in Asia, but it's also mixed in with like an arcade. I had never heard of one before, so I had to Google it, and then I saw some videos on YouTube and I was like, okay, really loud, but like very, you could see how it just would like bring you in and just like overstimulate you, and you would just want to win, like, I guess, yeah, like a casino. Perfect. So he's getting by with work. He's working odd jobs here and there, but his personality, I guess, is one that he wanted to make a lot of money, but he didn't want to work really hard for it. So he was trying to find ways to accomplish that. So he becomes a part-time recruiter. I don't even like that word. It's like predator for a brothel that's in like the red light district in Japan. His job was essentially to lure women to work there, like build up their trust. And like I said earlier, his friends always said that he did have that ability to just like listen and take in what you're saying and act like he really cared. So he definitely used that to his ability when it came to something like this, because he'd build this rapport with these women and then be like, hey, like I have a really good opportunity for you. You should check this out. You could make a lot of money. And then he would essentially get like a finder's fee for bringing these women over there. It sounds like he was quite successful at doing it for the short period of time he did because of that ability to gain trust. I don't think a lot of people knew that this is what he was doing that were close to him, because women that were friends with him, they'd always explain him as like really sweet and like very gentle and docile. I mean, I'm sure that was part of the lure when he was using it to like for negative and like for his advantage. But he was described as having this unusually gentle side to him. There was one girlfriend that said he did have this like morbid fascination with death and suicide in particular, but to her, she kind of like played it off as almost like that he was playing with her and it was just like a quirk. But he would say things to her like, oh, let's commit suicide together one day, like Romeo and Juliet, like let's go out together. And he even made a comment that one time he had killed a hostess because she had told him that she wanted to die, so he had helped her, and she just she just thought he was like fabricating this stuff and in this like little morbid little world of his. So it sounds like even like a quirk like that in their mind that they're thinking of it as, because of his like sweet demeanor, they just kind of played it off and just brushed it under the rug that it wasn't really anything. And he wasn't known to have like a short temper, short fuse. Nobody who knew him saw him like get angry or raged or anything. Even one of his girlfriends, when she went to his house to end the relationship with him, he never got mad. He was more like devastated. She said that all he asked was that she just hug him, and so she could just like hold him for a couple minutes, and he just said to her like, please don't do this, please don't go. And then that was it. Like when she was like, yeah, I've got to, he accepted it. He never had this like angry side to him that people saw. So not too long into this like recruiting business, aka preying on vulnerable women, he ends up getting caught and he's arrested and he's sentenced to 14 months in jail. And then I believe he got like 5 years on probation after that, 3 years. So he serves his time, and when he gets out, he moves back in with his dad. And nothing's out of the ordinary. And then all of a sudden in August, he tells his dad that he's met the love of his life and he needs to move out of his place stat and get his own apartment. So his dad agrees, and he agrees to be like the co-signer on the lease. And he finds an apartment to rent for 19,000 yen, which I Googled worked out to be like $230. Okay, even now that I'm saying that, it just sounds different. I'm going to double check it. 19,000 sounds like a lot. Okay, yeah, so 19,000 yen in Canadian is like $240, and American it's like $190. You can't even rent a closet for that in Canada. Oh, okay, never mind. Apparently the space was 13.5 square meters. I should have been more prepared. Okay, which according to Google is 145 square feet. That legit sounds like a closet. Okay, so that makes sense. Okay, so on August 22nd, he moves in. So while he's living on his own, he's building up this following on Twitter, and it looks like he had 2 separate accounts. One of them was geared towards being suicidal, where he would talk about himself wanting to die. And then the other one was like a professional suicide assistant who was particularly knowledgeable in suicides by hanging. So he would be somebody who would be like a resource for someone who was interested in it, and then he could help them follow through or give them tips. I didn't even know these sorts of things existed. So in the first account, he'd say things like, I just want to forget everything. On August 25th, 2017, he posted, I just want to disappear. And then under the second account, which the username loosely translates to hangman, his profile picture is like this manga guy with slit wrists and like a noose around his neck and like slit throat, I think. And then he'd post things like, I would like to spread my knowledge about hanging. And I really want to become the source of strength for everyone who's in pain. If you are at a dead end, please consult me. Now, I don't know exactly the sequence of events, but from what I could gather, not long after he moves out on his own, he must have had like some sort of disagreement or falling out with his dad. So he wasn't talking to him much at that time. And I think it was significant because it sounds like maybe his dad was helping him financially while he was on his own, getting on his feet. So he decides that he's going to make money on his own using those skills of communicating with women online. But instead of bringing them to like a brothel in the red light district, he's going to seduce them and convince them to lend him money. He finds his first victim. She's a 21-year-old young woman who was an acquaintance of his. He did know her prior, and he manages to convince her to put $4,500 into his account. I don't know the specific terms of this loan. I don't know if there was a deadline or if she just changed her mind and was like, oh, I actually really need that money right now. But it came to a point where she was like, you have to pay me back that money pretty quickly. So he starts to panic because 1, he doesn't have the money to pay her back. And 2, he thinks she's going to go to jail saying, you know, like he's now stolen this money. He refuses to give it back to me. And he's already been there. And now he's like, oh, you know, like I've conned another woman. I don't want to go back to jail. He lures her to his apartment, I'm sure under the pretense of, I'm going to pay you back. And when she gets there, he attacks her and he strangles her. He said after he was done, he didn't know what to do with her body. So he spent the next 3 days dismembering her so that she could fit in one of these coolers. She's got a boyfriend and he's concerned, obviously, because he knew that she had lent this money and he knew that she was going to collect it. So he reaches out to Takahiro and he's like, hey, have you seen her? I know she was supposed to meet up with you, and ever since that day, I haven't talked to her. I can't get a hold of her. Did she tell you anything when you guys met up that, like she was going somewhere, or like what's the deal? So again, I don't know what he said to this boyfriend, but he manages to get him to come to the apartment as well, and he's scared that he's going to go to the police and tell investigators that he's the last known person to see her alive. So when he gets there, he kills him as well. Reading his version of like how everything went down, it sounds like he was just that nonchalant about it. It was like, okay, yeah, hey, can you come over? And then like, I'm just gonna silence you and not even think twice about it. He said the transition from not being a killer to killer was difficult, but then after his first victim and teaching himself how to like dismember a body, he said it was really easy after that. So over the next 2 months, he goes on a killing spree and he kills another 7 people. All of them are young women between the ages of 15 and 26 years old. I've said it before and I'll say it again. What the fuck is wrong with people? He would find these victims by specifically going onto Twitter and searching for certain hashtags where he could find vulnerable women who were out there online looking for somebody who could understand this, vulnerable suicidal state that they were in. Apparently, he used the hashtag suicide recruitment quite often. Like, I didn't even know there was such a thing, which is like quite scary, especially being a parent, because like it's so easy to connect with somebody online, and by like the click of a few buttons and popping up a hashtag, you find like this entire community that can relate to you. And although like sometimes it can be super positive and people can just really vent and unleash and work things out together, if you have the wrong person on there, like obviously it can be absolutely tragic. So he'd find these women and he'd reach out to them through DM and he'd say things like, hey, let's die together. Other times he'd ask them things like, if you're interested in suicide, I'm interested in like watching someone do it. Would you mind if I watched you do it? And then sometimes he'd use the whole, I'm like a coach and I can help you do it, and really push the idea of, I'll be there with you so that you're not alone. And reading some of the posts that were translated of his tactic to prey on these women was just sick. For example, on October 21st, he says, bullying is everywhere, in school and at work. There must be many people in society who are suffering after attempting suicides, though their cases are not reported in the news. I want to help such people. So you really see this in action where he's seeking out people who are looking for somebody to talk to who can relate to them, using things like bullying. Like these people are at their lowest, most vulnerable points, and he's like, hey, yeah, like come and talk to me. And after they would, he'd even use ways to isolate them. He'd say things like, it's not good to tell your family and friends or like other social media networks, that you're having this plan of committing suicide. And that just makes me so angry for the victims and for their families who are still here. To know that your loved one reached out to somebody probably for comfort more than anything, and just understanding, and that just like bond, and then to be taken advantage of and like deliberately isolated from you to say like, yeah, like don't talk to your family, like they don't love you or understand, or they're gonna try to tell you something else and you're just going to continue suffering. I don't know how I would cope, like just thinking of somebody that I loved and cared about so much and feeling like, okay, did they really feel like we didn't love them or care enough to try to help them, and this person had better intentions because that's what he's convincing them? Like it just breaks your heart when you think of like how sick people can be. So he would arrange these meetings with the plan of whatever they had worked out through their messages, whether it be him assisting them, him just watching, or him saying he was also going to commit suicide with them. And to make sure that his victims didn't back out and this would actually happen for him, he would take the train close to where they lived and meet at that train stop, and then they would ride together to his house. So this way it ensured he wasn't relying on someone coming all the way to his train station and just, standing him up and not showing up. He would go get you and then bring you back to his house. He said that pretty much with every victim, he would give them alcohol and like sleeping pills so that they would relax. He said then he would sexually assault them, and after they were unconscious, he would then hang them and go through their belongings and steal any money they had. So he did this to 8 women in total with no apparent signs of stopping within the span of 2 months. And then on October 24th, 2017, that's when that brother called the police reporting his sister missing. So they open up an investigation and they see on some CCTV footage an image of her walking with a male, but her brother doesn't know who it is and he can't identify him. So while they're working behind the scenes trying to locate who this individual is, her brother goes and does some investigating of his own, and he breaks into her Twitter account and he sees, how bad her suicidal thoughts had gotten and that she was corresponding with somebody who she made a side pact with. It looks like Takahiro found her because she had made a tweet that said, "I want to die, but doing so alone sounds so lonely. I'd love to be able to die with somebody else." Her brother said he was aware that she was suicidal at this point. She was really down. They had recently lost their mother in July of that year, and she was having a really difficult time grieving. So after he finds this correspondence of messages between them, it's an alias. He still doesn't know who this guy is. So he goes back to Twitter and he tweets out that, he's got a missing sister and gives them a little bit of the background story. And then he asks anybody out there in like the Twitterverse if they know who this guy belonging to this Twitter handle is. And it turns out he's got a female follower who does know who he is. So he asks her if she's willing to reach out to him and essentially act like bait and lure him so the police can find him. So she agrees. They contact the police and they have them follow her undercover. So she arranges to meet with Takahiro and they arrange to meet on Halloween at a train station. It sounds like they just briefly hung out in public. I don't know the specifics if they had like lunch or coffee or something like that, but she didn't go back with him. But the police got back on the train with him so they could follow him back to his apartment. Immediately after he gets home, he like shuts the door, they knock, he answers, and they like get right to it. They're like, "Hey, do you know where this girl is? The last known contact was you and she's missing." And that's when, without pause, he just turns and points to the cooler behind him. In total, police officers found 9 heads and over 240 bones throughout his apartment in these boxes. Like I said, he didn't deny any involvement with her disappearance or her murder. He admits that he had been talking to her since around September 20th, and they had finally made an arrangement to see each other on the 23rd of October. And what's really sad is through their messages, you can see that she seems to be having doubts. She says she was starting to feel like she was unsure with actually following through with it. And it looks like he convinces her just to meet up with him to talk, which we now sadly know is not what his intentions were and was not what happened. When police interviewed neighbors around the area, they asked them, "Have you seen anything suspicious? Was this guy on your radar? Like any screams for the apartment? Like any information you can give us?" And all of them said no. He was like a really quiet guy. The only thing that they thought was weird was that there was like a funky smell coming from around that unit, but they thought it was like a sewer issue. And apparently he would try to mask the smell by like sprinkling cat litter over top of the remains. He told investigators he was able to dispose of most of the body through like the garbage, but he kept like all of the bones in big pieces because he thought like there was no way he could conceal that and he was gonna get caught that way. When they asked him like, "Hey, why did you do this, man? Like, what the f is wrong with you?" He said he didn't really have a motive, but if he had to think of one, it would be that he was just wanting money and sex. He said he would get them in a vulnerable state by like drugging them and giving them alcohol, and this way they wouldn't like fight back his advances, and then he would take their money because he wanted to have a nice lifestyle, but he wanted it easy. Real fucking piece of work. During his trial, his defense team tried to argue that he wasn't really responsible for murder. They said he killed his victims with consent because they were suicidal, so he was only guilty of homicide with consent. And you know what? In a defense lawyer standpoint, like looking in, it probably could have worked and like led to some reasonable doubt for some of the jurors. But Takahiro asks to testify himself, and he says he's the one who killed the women and he wanted to take full responsibility for doing so, and that none of them had given him consent. He said that he got the feeling none of them actually wanted to commit suicide, because when he got to the point of going to kill them, they were resisting his attack. It's really disturbing to read how he really handled things in court. I know the question that we always have when we research and view these cases is why? And I don't know what we expect the answer to be. It's like you're not dealing with somebody on an empathetic, compassionate, rational playing field when you're asking these questions like to a serial killer. So what do you expect the answer to be, to feel better? And he's a prime example of that. Like, just like, because when he was asked, like, why? How could you do this? He said that he was able to draw a line between people he loved and cared about, and that everybody else was other people that he didn't. He said the only thing that he regretted was that there were a ton of things that he looked back on after he got caught that he could have done to prevent that from happening. At one point, he did make a brief statement where it seemed like he was like kind of remorseful. He said, "I'm sorry for taking lives so easy." And then he said he apologizes to some of the victims' family that he spent a little bit more time with. But then immediately after that, he's like, but for the other victims, I don't really feel a deep sense of regret. And then goes a step further by saying, "I'm only sorry because I failed when I got caught. If I wasn't arrested, I wouldn't regret anything." Just such a slap in the face to these poor family members. Like, those are the moments where you see like drama unfolding in the courtroom, where one of the family members like lunges over like the barricade and they get like a really like good solid shot in before like they're both like separated. I read some of the victim impact statements and they were really raw and emotional. It just like, I don't usually get my hands on too many like court transcripts and like pieces of those that are released, and it brings these people to life and it brings their family to life, and you feel for them even more. One father, he said that every time he saw a young girl walk by that was around his daughter's age, he'd always initially just like think it was her and then catch himself and remember what had happened. And he just looked at Takahiro and he was like, "Please just give her back to me." Another one of the victims, her brother, said that when his little sister died, a piece of his heart had also died. And then on top of that, just hearing like the absolute disregard that this monster had for her life, like made it even worse. He said it was like being hurt all over again, and just like somebody shoving a knife in him and just like twisting that wound even deeper. Last week on December 15th, 2020, he was sentenced to death, and he said he's not going to appeal that decision. The death penalty in Japan is by hanging still, and I read that there's about 100 or more people on death row currently. And apparently there isn't usually a date of execution. It's like you don't have a lot of time to prepare for it. It's like, tomorrow's the day, or like today's the day. So it's very like unexpected. So we have really no idea when this could happen. He said his only request before dying is that he marry an ordinary girl. He said he wants to find a marriage partner while he is in jail. Sure, John, that'll happen. While researching this case, I learned that Japan has one of the highest suicide rates in the world, with over 20,000 people taking their lives annually. And I guess suicide prevention groups are trying to find a way to control some of the material that you can access through social media. But it's proving to be a difficult task because they are aware of the fact that this is an outlet for some people in a positive way, and it doesn't always end up in a situation like this. So if they, completely like prohibit and ban and shadow ban like certain hashtags, it could almost be even more detrimental, because then these individuals who are seeking help don't even have anybody to like release that for. So it would put them like further into like this hole that they're in. And that makes it so sad that these victims, that's all they wanted. They just wanted this outlet and to have somebody to talk to. And since starting my channel, I've had several people reach out to me and talk about some of their past experiences and how in life they have been suicidal, or that they're currently in a really dark place right now, and that they appreciate being able to come on the channel and watch videos and just like have a place to escape and talk with other people in the comments and find bonds that way. And to have that impact on somebody means the absolute, whew, okay. It means the absolute world to me, you guys. Getting a little bit emotional on you guys. Apologies, did not intend for that to happen. To take that trust of somebody who's really confiding in you and to twist that and prey on somebody, like it's just monstrous. Like when you are given the gift to have a platform to reach somebody and make an impact on their lives, how dare you use it for evil? A little bit of a cookie. You guys, if you are struggling with anything right now, if you're having thoughts of suicide, please reach out to somebody that you love. If you feel like you don't have anybody in your life that you can reach out and talk to and that they're not going to understand you, please reach out to a suicide hotline in your area. I'm going to add a link that I found on Wikipedia, and it's an alphabetical list of all the countries with the suicide hotline that is designated to them. So please take a look at it. If you are feeling any type of way, there is seriously always somebody there that is going to be able to talk to you and help you. I just want you to know that you are all so loved. That's it for me today, you guys. Thank you so much for watching. I'm sending you all so much love over the holidays and into the new year. I'm gonna miss you terribly until the next time I see you. If you haven't already, please don't forget to like and subscribe. Each and every one of you mean the absolute world to me, and I love and I appreciate you so much. I will see you in the next video. Until then, make sure to love each other, love yourself, be yourself, love yourself. Again, movie reference, if you haven't seen Just Friends, that just looks psycho. We gotta go, we gotta get out of here. I will see you soon. Bye.